You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Hello, I'm Steven Willis from the Locked On Ole Miss podcast. He is Zach Moreth from The Rebel Walk. Yes, everybody that has watched my show from the beginning knows that in the beginning, I was associated with the Rebel Walk. I love Evie and all those guys over there, and I will always look out for them. And Zach does a fantastic job for the Rebel Walk as well. You know, Zach, you were out at practice today. What were your impressions coming off the practice field?
A lot of energy, Steven. The first thing I got to mention, it was the first full day in pads. So we did see a little bit of an Oklahoma drill between the linebackers on the running backs, which I thought was fantastic. The first guy I want to point out is Rashad Amos. This is a big dude we're talking about, Steven. He's listed at 6'1", 235, the transfer from Miami of Ohio. But he could definitely turn into that bruiser-type running back that Ole Miss is looking for when they're in the goal line situation, especially with Logan Diggs still recovering. The next thing I wanted to talk about was Caden Lee. Obviously, there's a ton of hype surrounding him, but we are seeing him get a lot of slot reps, especially with Jordan Watkins had a black jersey on. Not that that's anything to be concerned about, but clearly there's something that he's wanted to take slowly. So Caden Lee is getting a lot of reps in the slot position, Steven. And then every week, every day, actually, we see Tre Harris just absolutely dominate one-on-ones. So that's a lot of fun, man. He's such a good player. And then staying in that wide receiver room, they're also taking it slow with Juice Wells. He had full pads on, clearly he's still recovering. They had him on the bike a little bit, but that makes me happy, Steven, because I don't want to rush him back and risk another potential injury. But when I watch Tre Harris, all I can think about is, how is this guy going to look with Juice Wells on the field with him at the same time? So a lot of exciting stuff, and I just can't wait for game day, Steven.
Yeah, if you look at it, Tre Harris was PFF's number one player in the entire country going against single coverage. So, if you're going up against him in one-on-ones, you're probably going to have to pack a lunch.
Yeah, it's almost not even fair. I do feel bad, but hey, you got to figure it's making the defense a little bit better, right? And then also TJ Daugherty, former TJ Dudley, for those who don't know, and Suntarine Perkins, they appear to be talking to Coach Golding for a solid 10 to 15 minutes. So clearly, Golding's trying to get them to focus on probably a specific type of coverage, play or blitz, but they are going to be lethal at the linebacker position. I'm really high on TJ, especially after the Penn State game, Steven, because he fit in perfectly, man. And then now you get a full season of that. It really is exciting, especially when you have the rotational pieces. You can put him off the edge. You can put him at linebacker. There's so many things and so much versatility that I'm loving from this Ole Miss team so far.
Yeah, and we'll talk about Princely Umanmielen and all that after the break, but Princely actually said that this defense is very complex and that he's had to reach out to Pete Golding at like 10:30 at night multiple times to get ready, which kind of explains young players like Suntarine Perkins and TJ Daugherty getting some one-on-one instruction, because you're trying to ramp up the development of these players. And now that analysts can get on the field and coach, and you can do these small group instructional periods, that can't be anything but good but for those guys.
You're exactly right, Steven. And you mentioned the analyst thing. I remember in the spring, Umanmielen was talking to the media, and he mentioned how Lou Spanos, an analyst, was like thoroughly breaking down where he needed to be in coverage, what gap was he shooting, these different types of things. And now you have Zach Arnett working with the guys. So this staff, between everything going on, it's easily one of the best in the country. And that makes me excited, especially when guys like Princely, he was throwing a little bit of shade at Florida, but I think he was also just trying to capitalize how thorough and experienced these coaches are at Ole Miss.
Yeah, I think he was giving Ole Miss props more than he was throwing shade at program, because Lane Kiffin and his staff, he comes from the Nick Saban school, the Pete Carroll school, which means it's thorough. It is unbelievably thorough.
Yes.
When you have a guy like Pete Golding, who is also from that Nick Saban school, which means this defense is everything's going to be thorough and down to the T. And they're not just going to say, hey, go out and make plays, which he said was kind of the thing. Dealing with like a 30-year-old defensive coordinator at Florida a year ago. So it wasn't necessarily shade. It was just lack of experience. But yeah, it's almost like, hey, we are going to give you all of the information.
Exactly. And then just one other thing here, Steven. Nate Kalepo, it looks like he's recovering. But he should be back soon. He wasn't a full go today. But Micah Pettis, he's looking great at right tackle. And then Jaquan Scott, the Southern Miss transfer. We saw him at guard. We saw him snapping a little bit. Again, he did play a little bit of center and guard at Southern Miss. So I would imagine he's going to fill in as a crucial depth piece for this offensive line.
Yeah, that's kind of an important thing. I did something on my show a couple of days back about Jaquan Scott. And if he can be a center option to where he actually wins that job. We know what Caleb Warren can do. We have seen that. But after Caleb Warren the last couple of years, there's been snap issues. If Jaquan Scott can fill that role, the offensive line is going to be much better, and you're going to see more timing-based plays run by this offense. In 2022, they just couldn't even run a jet sweep because of the timing couldn't be synced up with the snap. So if everything can be consistent and you can count on more than one centers, this offense has a chance to be even more effective.
Exactly. No, and that's the main thing. I also really enjoy, just watching Diego Pounds. People forget, I believe he's only a redshirt sophomore, so the hope is that he comes back next year as well. But he's, just a huge dude. Clearly him and Jackson have a great relationship, which obviously, we've said it, but Dari's really, really talented at just building connections with his teammates. And then headed into the running back room, Henry Parrish, he spoke to the media. It's just good to see him back in an Ole Miss uniform. One of the things that I'm high on for Parrish is that when he was at Miami, he was kind of in a rotation of 2 or 3 guys for the past 2 years. So this really isn't anything he's unfamiliar with, especially, now he's back with Kevin Smith. And he's not the type of guy to be selfish if, Bentley or Amos or Diggs are getting more carries than him. He's a guy who's going to come in and do his job and be really good at it too. So I'm looking forward to that.
Thanks again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first and listen every day. When we come back, we're going to talk about a potential backup quarterback competition that we've talked about for the last couple of weeks. We'll talk about that. And Princely Umanmielen, he may be back sooner than we think he will. But first, I love sports. I love them so much, I never want them to stop. But with the playoffs winding down, I get fewer and fewer games. And the sports just aren't sportsing the way I want them to. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up any bets anytime I am in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a booster of bonus daily. So maybe you can bet on Ole Miss Rebels over-under and wins that currently set at 9.5. Or maybe you're interested in Ole Miss being minus 122 to make the college football playoff, or perhaps Jackson Dart at plus 1,500 to win the Heisman Trophy is your flavor of choice. That's right. There's something for everyone every day all summer long. So head on over to FanDuel.com/lockedon and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, it's an official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. And with over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay's Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every single time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. And with all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay's Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day and you have to turn down the volume with all of that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, or even Locked On Sports College Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you each and every single day to bring you the biggest stories without all of that screaming. Locked On College Sports Today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube, or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So Zach, out of practice, he mentioned to me before we hit record on this, that, hey, Ole Miss may have a little bit of a backup quarterback competition going on. And I was like, that kind of warmed my heart, because that's a conversation I've been happening for weeks at this point. What have you noticed from Austin Simmons and Walker Howard, and how does that backup quarterback race look to you?
Yeah, Steven. So today specifically, Austin was getting a lot of reps, right up there with Dart even. And it looked like he was throwing to some of your marquee players too at the same time. One of the things that stood out to me was not only that number of reps, but it looked like, when they were going through, like, they're kind of like their lines of who's in what order. It seemed like Austin was always a little bit ahead of Walker. Now, again, this could change on a daily basis, but, I was telling you, I wasn't sure there was going to be much of a QB2 battle. I was kind of waiting for that to unfold next year. But with Austin getting all these reps and standing where he is, it was seemingly that number 2 spot, there's absolutely a battle for quarterback too. And you have to take that into consideration, because, the second Dart goes down, it really does matter, because I think with Austin or with Walker, you still have a really good chance at winning a lot of games. But, it's going to be really interesting to see who's determined to take that role. But right now, Austin, he's looking pretty legit out there, Steven.
Yeah, and I will say this, and I need to be careful about this, but the spring game, with what it was, one of the players that was disappointed about that was Austin Simmons. And not because he wasn't there to have fun or anything like that. He just knew that this was going to be his unveiling to the Ole Miss fan base. And he had a very keen understanding of what that was. So he wanted to go out there and play football, even if it was simple, playing football so everybody can see it. But we'll see. Likely against Furman will be the first time that most Ole Miss fans really get to see him. And at that point, Walker Howard, because if both of those don't play, something horrible happened.
Exactly. And it's going to be figured out sooner than later, because, after those 4 games, Ole Miss, you need a reliable backup at that point. So it's going to be really interesting. But Austin Simmons, man, guy has an absolute cannon. He's very mobile, quick on his feet, and his knowledge of the game is just so impressive to watch. But, I can't say I'm surprised. In the offseason, we're watching him play catch with Jalen Waddle. Like, this guy has the connections, he has the training, and obviously, he has the skill set to take on the QB2 role. But I don't want to get ahead of myself. I'm just excited to see how that plays out.
Oh, I'll get ahead of myself. I do call him Tua with 3 more inches. I've said that for months at this point. But yeah, I'm looking forward to Austin Simmons and Walker Howard. Like I said, the difference between Austin Simmons and Walker Howard is Austin Simmons is just out there. He's on social media. It's just that thing. Walker Howard just kind of goes about his business. So if Walker Howard ends up winning that job, it might surprise some people, but you probably shouldn't be, because Walker isn't that social media guy.
Exactly. Yeah, Walker's right up there. It's just, again, you don't hear about him as much because of the differences in personality, but guy's got a cannon. He's quick, and just like Austin, very knowledgeable, has a lot of experience with elite players around him. So it's going to be fun to watch.
And the last thing is Princely Umanmielen. He met the media today. And there's a couple of things. If a player is really hurt, if he's going to miss significant time, Ole Miss does not put him in front of the media. That's just the way that works. So him coming out there is a sign that Ole Miss thinks that he is further along than we think. They asked Princely Umanmielen about it. He said he considers himself day-to-day and that he'll probably be back. I think it was your colleague Cam Wicker that said he would probably be back for the Furman game.
Yeah, that's spot on, Steven. And he was running through a lot of non-contact drills last week. There really wasn't a day where he was fully sitting out. So to me, that was a great sign. But for him to come out and say that is just music to my ears, because he's a crucial part of that defensive line. You kind of need him on the other side of Jared Ivey to really make some special things happen off the edge. But again, Ole Miss is in a great spot because, you play Furman and your schedule stays at that level for the first 4 weeks. So there's no need to rush anything. But hearing that confidence from Princely is extremely assuring and a great thing for Randall Joyner.
So what are some things that popped up that I've noticed that I didn't think to ask about that you noticed today?
Yeah, so I think the first thing was that Walter Nolan was in a non-contact jersey, which again, I don't love.
I think Lane load manages players, especially veteran players.
Yes, and the black jersey thing, it's not a big deal because if they were really hurt, they wouldn't be out there at all. But he was going through a little bit of treatment. It looked like at some point, wasn't fully participating, obviously, but I'm not concerned. And on the flip side of that, JJ Pegues took off his non-contact jersey and he was a full participant, which I love. I'm fully expecting Pegues to most likely win that Chucky Mullins Award in a couple of weeks here. So it's exciting to see a guy like that, a guy who's, been recruiting this entire defense, finally have the chance to get out there in fall camp and just have a full go.
You think he is the favorite to win the Chucky Mullins jersey?
If I had to bet some money, Steven, that would be my pick.
Because I was thinking Jared Ivey could be on that list too.
Yeah, I'm thinking one of the two. You could even throw Tre Washington in there, but I think Pegues being from Oxford, and Lane does talk about a lot of the philanthropy stuff he does. So if I had to lean one way, I'd pick him.
Listen, Tre Washington is an interesting thing. This has become a front seven award for whatever reason over the last couple of years.
But
the Chucky Mullins Award, though, originally was somebody on the back end of the defense, and Tre Washington getting that, I mean, it would be no different than what it was in 90 and 91, like Chris Mitchell and all those.
Yeah. No, you're right. I also am curious to see if whoever gets it decides to wear the patch or does the whole jersey flip. So
should be interesting. By the way, the patch, the first time that happened was when Patrick Willis, the recent NFL Hall of Famer, he won the Chucky Mullins Award, but they thought the number 38 jersey was cursed at that point because I'm not joking about this. About 3 years prior, the player that got 38 ended up getting injured.
No way.
And so Patrick Willis, when he got 38, he's like, well, I wear it, but is there any way I don't have to wear it?
That
happened.
No, you can't play a guy like Patrick Willis. I would make sure he doesn't wear that jersey.
Yeah. And with his club on his hand and the whole 9 yards. Yeah. I remember all of that happening and him coming out with the patch on and the whole 9 yards. It was
hilarious. Cool. Well, okay. Hopefully, whoever gets it, even if they do wear it, let's just pray there's no injuries.
Thanks again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Zach, from the Rebel Walk, what do you got going on this weekend, bud?
Yeah, I'm taking a quick vacation home, Steven, and then we're back here next week, full go, man, fall camp, and then a couple of weeks we got Furman. So I'm really looking forward to it. But again, thank you for having me on, sir.
No problem at all. Let's do it again, okay, bud?
Yes, sir. Thank you.